When the Nintendo Entertainment System landed in 1985, it had 17 games available at launch. By the time it was retired in 1995, there were over 700. If you lived through the decade, chances are you experienced the classics and a few off-the-wall titles as well. During this episode of A Gamer Looks at 40, we focus on the games that defined our fandom during the NES era. Now, apologies to the Netflix series of the same name, but I don't have a better title than this. So it's time to blow out that cartridge and explore the NES games that made us.
Will you be the one to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot, batteries not included. He helps you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt or action-packed Hogan's Alley and high-flying Kung Fu, each sold separately? Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System? Comes with Rob, Zapper, Control Deck, 2 controllers, Gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
Blue Williams, co-host of Story Mode Podcast and gaming journalist, tells us about her childhood obsessions during the NES era. What are the games that you guys end up getting along the way?
Gosh, let's see. We got all the Disney ones, basically. You know,
okay.
the Darkwing Ducks, the Rescue Rangers, Mickey Mouse Capade, DuckTales, of course. DuckTales is the big one.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
classic. Man, DuckTales is good. That's another one I've yet to beat, but it's on my bucket list, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to happen soon.
Yeah. Then there's Tetris is a big one, but at our house, the super big one was Dr. Mario.
Yes, I know you're a big Dr. Mario fan.
I love Dr. Mario.
It's a great game. I mean, it's really fantastic.
Yeah.
What about Dr. Mario? Geez. What about Dr. Mario? Catches you.
I don't know. It's a simple concept. Easy to pick up. Anybody could play it. So it was easy. It was a game that I could play. And if you play, 2-player versus, then I could set the level where I wanted to. And you can hand the player 2 to a younger sibling, and they can set the level what they need to. And so it was something we could all play together. And then, of course, as the years went on, the younger siblings got better and better and better and better. And then eventually they got better than me. So we've always had this really fierce rivalry at our house about who can be the best at Dr. Mario. And yeah, spoilers, it's not me.
You got passed over?
I did.
Aw, man. That's all right. I mean, that's interesting because I guess Dr. Mario, and I've never really thought about it that way, it is pretty scalable.
Yeah.
That's
great.
interesting.
It's great because that's the thing about a lot of video games is especially if you have multiple kids in the household, everybody wants to play. Everybody wants their turn. So the rare games that you can play together that everybody can have the same amount of fun, those are really important.
Michael K. Hughes, co-host of the Games My Mom Found podcast, talks about an infamous title that everyone got but no one could beat for, let's be honest, pretty legitimate reasons. Let's listen in. Any other games that you kind of remember latching onto a lot? Harder in the NES era, I'm sure, because we didn't have a lot, right? You got one game a year. That's what you had.
We were another one of those families that fell into the ploy of this is a Ninja Turtles game, so you should buy this because all the kids love Ninja Turtles, so buy this game with Ninja Turtles in it. Holy crap, that game.
Oh no.
It goes on in infamy, so I don't even need to go into it, but man.
No. Did you ever complete it as a kid?
Not the entire game, but I could still... We did the dam. I know we were able to do the dam, and just last month I went back and did the dam level just to see if I could still do it, and I still got it.
Okay. Cool. And have you beat it as an adult?
No. God, no.
Wow. Still no. Can you get to the Technodrome?
I don't think so.
Wow. Okay. I've never tried because I'm just a weenie when it comes to that.
It's definitely one of those things that I would have to sit down and really force myself to stick with because it's not much of a game, unfortunately.
We have a timer ticking above our heads at all times. We have limited time on this planet, so...
And I wasted enough of it playing meaningless games for the podcast, so...
Yeah. You spend a lot of time playing stuff you don't want to. It's time for another segment with Trevor Alexander of the New Dad Gaming Podcast. This time around, we run the gambit from hockey to racing to building smashing kaiju in the span of nearly 20 minutes or so. We go places, so let's dive in. You had your Atari. Did you have an NES, or what was like the next step for you in your household?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so the next one was the NES for sure. So which it feels like every person of our age group seems to have had the memories with that little gray box sitting down,
yes.
and all the memories that streamed from it. So NES and Game Boy were the next ones that showed up in the household.
Very cool. Was there a particular game or games that you were just obsessed with?
Yeah, I think so Blades of Steel.
Ooh.
So I myself also played hockey growing up. So
Okay.
Blades of Steel was hyper competitive, and to this day, in some small way, still holds up.
It's fantastic. I play it like maybe once every couple of months. I'll pop in, Blades of Steel. It's so good.
Yeah, and that will be. So my dad did bring back the original Atari, but what was funny is he did not like games. My dad was definitely the prototypical athlete. Like, he is an incredible athlete and always like running around, jogging, playing hockey, playing baseball. Wasn't much into games, but Blades of Steel was the only game I ever played with him. So to be clear, he wasn't like negative on the hobby by any means, but
Sure.
it just he wasn't really into it.
Right.
He had just got it for our benefit. And Blades of Steel, that was the only game I ever got him to actually play. So it always has a funny retrospective on it. It's like, oh yeah, the game I actually played with my dad, the only one. Besides physical hockey.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, Blades of Steel is a classic. It's such a great pick up and play game. Like, anyone can just grab that. Until NHL 94, of course, that was probably the hockey game that was pick up and play. Even more so than like NES hockey, which, you still had to. There's a little bit of. It was fine, but Blades of Steel for some reason is just so accessible. The fighting is fun. Just the goofy fighting and. Man, really great. Now I have all the memories of Blades of Steel and all the music. The music's great too.
I think the one voice line in the NES game, probably the only one I ever remember, which like it sounded so horrible, but it still felt so futuristic.
Blades of Steel.
Blades of Steel.
That's good. Everyone, take the pass, take the pass, take the pass.
Oh
Yeah.
my god! Right.
Yeah,
But,
man.
so we had so that one. I adored Rampage. So it was the NES version of Rampage.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, funny story with that one. And it kind of spoke to a lot of the games at the time where it set about a challenge for players, but it didn't really go anywhere often. So specifically Rampage, like, you could beat it, as I discovered. And this was, I had like what would have been almost a 6-hour session, because there was no saving in this game. So
Wow,
you didn't like
that's right.
save progress. There was no even code as an enter this like 6-digit code so you can get back to your level. But there was something to the effect of 50 to 100 levels you had to beat. And it's not like they got more difficult. It just was a lot of them. So it was a time commitment. And young me was just like, all right, I'm going to beat this game. So some sunny summer afternoon, just 6 hours of grinding and grinding and grinding. And finally, the levels are ticking up. Let's just say it gets to 99. And finally get through level 99. I've arrived. This has been 6 hours of my life and dedication. Like, let's see what happens. Black screen, text saying, congratulations, you win. Back to the title screen.
No,
That is
come on.
It more felt like the text should be like, what are you doing here? Like, why? Why did you do this to yourself?
Should be the end of Ferris Bueller. Why are you still here?
Yeah, basically.
Go home. Oh, no.
And just that, like, the elation, like, because, I dedicated
Yeah.
myself. I can't wait to see it. Hey, thanks. I just dropped off a cliff.
Man, that is so unfair. Oh,
Couldn't believe it.
Rampage, what are you doing? Something. And that's just the worst too, because they could have done something. They could have put like just drew your character, a little pixel art character dancing hooray.
We can even remember with Metroid, which was
Sure.
that was a beast to beat. Like that was a heck of a game to actually complete. And you finally did get to the end, and they had that like massive reveal. It's like, oh, Samus is actually a woman.
Right.
Thanks for playing. And then just like fade to black. So at least you're kind of like left like in shock and awe, like, oh my god, the person I was for all of this adventure was a woman. Amazing. And then at least gives you something.
Something at least. Yeah, I mean, I used to talk about Metroid. That was one of my big gaming marathons. It was a rainy Saturday, and I decided to beat Metroid all in one shot. I don't think I'd ever beat it before. And I think I spent 7 hours straight playing Metroid without even saving, nothing. I think I ate lunch and ran back downstairs. And by the time I was done, I was so zonked out. Like the sun was going down in the window there. I played in the basement, so like barely light coming in. And I thought I saw Ridley like underneath the stairs. I swear, I thought I saw Ridley, the alien, under the stairs, glaring at me. But I did it. I beat Mother Brain. It's to be 7 hours. I don't think I got because I think if you take too long to beat Metroid, I don't think you find out Samus Aran's a woman. I think she leaves her helmet on. I think.
Oh.
I think you have to beat it within.
That makes you want to look it up because I also don't want to mischaracterize it, because if that was I don't think it's the SNES version.
No, I think there's NES too. We'll have to look it up. I could be completely wrong and mistaking it for Super Metroid. I might be doing that. I might be doing that. Regardless, we'll accept your version is truth. Yeah. I will accept that as truth.
That's how I remember it, and memory is real to the person who remembers it. So
exactly, it's right. Memories always have a bit of a tint to it. Cool, man. Any other games that you were just really NES? Yeah, man, I love this thing.
So the quick one, then a bit of a longer one. So the quick one was I did the same awful nonsense with NASCAR. So because it had the Daytona. So it's Daytona 500.
Okay.
And on the NS it was just you have to have 500 laps. And it took like 6 hours to get through it. God. So again, it's just one of those things where I'm going this child stubbornness of I'm going to make this happen. So just 500 laps in the most uninteresting game possible. Nothing really happening, just like pixels blurring past screens for like 6 hours, and then finally hey, congrats, you did it. Pew, back to screen. But
after the break, Trevor and I continue our chat about NES friendships, Final Fantasy, and robot baseball. All after the break. So growing up again, you played a lot, of course, at home with your dad, and obviously your dad was there with his Atari, and you had some friends. Did you have any connections or friendships grow from that, from the gaming, and especially at school, obviously, early on?
Yeah, not so much early on. I can remember it was a very active, it was a really blessed childhood, if I'm honest. Like I was really lucky to have what I would consider like 5 to 6 of my best friends live within 5 minutes where I was from.
Oh, wow.
So we're all just in the same neighborhood. So it's very much like a Rockwell painting where I grew up, and okay, I'm going to run out the door, we'll go over to my buddy's place, we'll be there for 10 minutes, run over to the next buddy's place. So really video games would be that interspertant experience at houses. So maybe my one buddy had this Nintendo game and another one had a different Nintendo game, and just kind of roaming around, running around. 2 buddies of mine, actually, their parents were huge into garage sailing, and they're really good at it. And one thing that always came up were Nintendo games. So their collection sprouted up to like 100 different games. Just this massive collection, like put within drawers and drawers of them. Like you could never play them all.
Of course.
So that it was very much the in-house jumping between all these places, between all of our friends. Eventually at some point we'd end up at the one friend's house, and it's just which of these 100 games do you want to like dive into today?
Wow.
And off we would, and then there's your afternoon.
What a treasure trove, right? Like what a opportunity for discovery. Do you remember offhand any like just crazy titles that you experienced in that way? Because I can't imagine it. I'm sure some of them were just off the wall, bizarre games.
Yeah, I think for sure you'd always get the occasional Japanese one where it's eventually you start playing a game. Like you have to you're just pressing the menu until eventually a game starts to happen. And it turns out to be some really left field RPG. So,
oh no.
Like I can't do anything with this.
No,
I think one of the favorites of the group for sure was Base Wars. Don't know if you remember that title at all.
It's familiar. Remind me of that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's too obscure, but Base War, so it's baseball, but with battling robots.
Okay, yes. Yeah, okay, I do, yes.
Yeah, which the best part is like, so if you choose your robots, you could do, there was a wild amount of customization for the time. As far as I want this robot to be in left field and to have the Gatling gun. I want this one to have wheels instead of tracks. And the worst part was that
so cool.
If you can't just get a robot out at base. So, I throw the ball, I'm going to get you out at first base. No,
right.
You have to battle.
Man.
Which was equally the coolest thing, because awesome, these are robots battling, and then also infuriating, because if it's a powerful robot, I got you out. Oh, great, I have to kill you, and I'm dead. So it's just like, as far as like a competitive sports game, it really didn't stand up that well. But it's one of those type of wild titles that I think was so interesting with the time, where it's just, as if they took a pegboard and just threw darts, and it's like, bam, baseball, bam, robots, bam, battling.
What do American kids really love? Baseball, robots, guns. These are the three things. That's awesome. I do. I've never played it, but I remember. I'm sure I saw it in Nintendo Power somewhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. I love that concept of having like this, almost like the Sandlot. Where you just went around, and instead of, I'm sure you guys played outside and such, but also just going around, hey, let's play 10 minutes of games at this person's house. That's cool. And you feel, and those kind of friendships, I'm sure, really kind of grew from that experience.
On a more meaningful note, I'll say the Final Fantasy, which it feels bizarre that game was on the NES. When you look at some of its counterparts, like some of the other games even that we're speaking of now, which certainly wonderful in their own right, but you'd almost call them shallow in a way. And I don't mean to discredit them. Like, they're great games, but just, you rampage, hit buildings, fall down, next level. Like, Final Fantasy, the massive scope of that game, the story, the battle systems, like all the various ways that you could actually approach it. Like, it's really wild to me that that game existed for that system and at that time. So I can remember like that game, buying the special magazine that actually tells you all the different weapons and its upgrades. Because remember, kids, like we didn't have internet back then. So
that's right. So, we had to read books,
actual books with paper and everything.
I know, it's crazy.
So it's either like your cousin Vinny wrote it on a napkin for you, telling you where to go, or you got this magazine. So just putting the time into that and just being thrown into that fantasy world. And that's very much for myself been a love that's carried on throughout all my gaming. Like Final Fantasy is still very much a series that I absolutely adore. Having replayed even some of the old PS2 ones recently, as they've been released on, modern consoles, on phones, like everything else like that.
Right.
But that one is really that game certainly left an impression. I don't know if you had a chance to play it yourself.
Oh yeah, I loved Final Fantasy. That I had the exact same experience.
Nice.
Final Fantasy was one of the first games I played that I was probably obsessed with. I used to actually be able to talk with. It allowed me to have conversations with kids that were outside of my social structure. Like kids that were cooler than I. There was this one kid who was like the track star. And there's no way Ramon was going to talk to me, but he played Final Fantasy, and so did I. And I had the player's guide that you had just talked about,
Nice.
the Nintendo Power Player's Guide. And I knew just the right place to farm ogres for experience outside of Crescent Lake. And yeah, I mean, I actually, because I used to walk home from school, and while walking home from school, it was a very short walk, maybe 3 blocks, but I was picked on quite a bit as a kid. When I felt nervous and afraid, I would pretend that the mages and the warriors in Final Fantasy were around me, protecting me as I walked around. It kind of gave me a little more confidence to get home if I felt threatened. Like, that's the kind of impact that game had on me. It was, and even just the beginning, the way that game is structured. You know, you first, I promise you, when you first, if you remember Final Fantasy, the first part, it's kind of shaped like the North America. So it's got like a South America, and then it goes like North America, that first section. And you have the Corneria, I think it's called, the initial city in town. And then you have the little dungeon where Garland is. And I promise you, I thought that was the game. Like, I thought that was it. Like, Final Fantasy, this is the game, right? Because you're talking about the games before that were, I would describe them as slight. Right? They're slight. They're fun, arcadey games, right? Points and all the rest of it. No real objective. You know, black ending screen with white lettering. Go home. But once you defeat Garland for the first time and that bridge opens up to the rest of the world, and you get that screen, the Final Fantasy music, and mind blown. Like, this is a whole new adventure. It's
the thought of that teased out cinematics. That feels, if you had that exact, for somebody who had never played that game, if you were to upgrade the graphics and have that exact sequence, it would feel so at home with modern video games, as far as bring the player in, let them play a little bit, a bit of a wool over their eyes, big reveal, and now we're going to show you the title. Now we're going to give you the orchestral score to describe it. So the thought that existed back on that console really feels completely out of time.
Yeah, I mean, cinematic is a great way of putting it. It's like Marvel movies are framed that way. That's how they're framed, right? You have like this adventure, a thing happens, boom, title card, right? Like, it's really ahead of its time. When your characters grow up, right? When you go from warrior, warrior to knight, and from mage to wizard. What? Like, again, just the whole world opens up. Man, it's crazy. Have you actually beaten it?
I did. So I didn't on the Nintendo, as much as I adored it, and I must have started over like a good 10 times. I finally did beat it, but it was with on the Nintendo, on a Game Boy, the Game Boy SP. They released it with the Final Fantasy 1 and 2, kind of this upgraded package with the both of them. Yep. And finally, I put in the time to finally beat it on that system instead. And despite the upgraded graphics, it was very much a throwback retro experience to young me getting to experience those big moments again, remembering those feelings as you went through that.
Yeah, it's a landmark game. It always bums me out when I see those top, all Final Fantasy games ranked worst to best. And then, Final Fantasy is number 22 out of 26. And you're like, really, man? Historical context, it does mean something. Like, it really does mean you can't compare the graphics, but I mean, obviously there's something to that game for what it was doing. That's awesome, man. Oh, go ahead. For the time, in the context of when it existed, it feels so far and beyond any other Final Fantasy game that's been built in many ways. For sure.
I mean, what they were able to accomplish, and how it really felt like none of the story elements, none of the gameplay were nerfed, given the crazy limitations of the system of all 8 bits. Count them.
Andrew Craig, frequent commenter on Game Informer's I Watched the Entire Overblood Super Replay group on Facebook, and former collaborator on a number of Nintendo concert productions, has a crazy love for Zelda that we'll be diving into on another episode. But today we talk about how the NES formed who he is as a person, and a game I never thought anyone would mention on this show in 100 years. Let's listen in. Yeah, interesting. So interesting out of the early systems. What was your first real entry point, though, that you like? Obviously, you remember playing in television. So did you skip the NES era, or
No,
did,
we absolutely had an NES, and if I had to credit anything with my current love of video games, it would be the NES
gotcha.
by far. Between the few games that I had, the few games that my best friend across the street had, but more than that, there was a kid who lived next to him who was like 16. He was like the kid that we wanted to be because we were at that point 7 or 8 years old, and he was 16, and he had hammer pants and every NES game known to man.
Wow, he was literally the kid in the Wizard with the glove, and he had all his
Yeah.
games.
Only he
Every
was really
single-
nice.
he wasn't a douche. He was actually a decent dude.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was a good guy. He would let us borrow 5 at a time.
Wow, cool, like a library. Nice.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one other game that really impacted you from that era, and then we kind of move on to other eras. If you had to pick one more that really you feel like hit home or really had an impact.
Okay, this one's kind of a weird one.
That's great. I love that.
But it's kind of a deep pull and kind of related stuff we've been talking about. It's Adventures in the Magic Kingdom.
Adventures in the Magic Kingdom.
It is a game where you play a kid who goes to Disneyland, and there's a big lock that requires keys, and Pete has taken all the keys and scattered them through the various rides. So there's a space shooter based on Space Mountain. There is a racing game based on Autopia. There is a platformer based on Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion. There is a trivia game.
Okay, listen, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
This is totally a real thing that exists out there. I have an inbox copy with the manual and the Nintendo Power Order form and the whole deal.
Oh, wow. Okay. Before you continue, you should see me holding my head. I own this game as well. My aunt got it for me. It's one of my games my aunt got me. There's going to be a whole series on the show about the games my aunt got me. Because my aunt just got me random weird stuff that I had no business to have for any reason. And one of those was Adventures in the Magic Kingdom. I know that game exactly. It had Space Mountain was the shooter, and it had a weird game where there's like ghosts and you were that little kid with the cowboy hat jump, right? Same thing?
Throwing candles.
Throwing candles? Okay. Yes, I know this game. Okay. Just so you know, I am aware, but wow, that is a pull. I did not wake up this morning thinking I'd be talking about Adventures in the Magic Kingdom. Oh, okay. Very cool.
It's one of those games that's just, it dug in deep. The music, the look of it, the fact that it's almost like a mini game collection, but has an overarching narrative to it. I was all about that as a kid.
That's crazy. That's so interesting and funny. That is cool. So what about that really? Yeah, because I actually enjoyed it too, because it had a lot of, lots of mini game, DNA to it. Was it just the fact that it was like just varied and interesting and kind of weird and fun?
Yeah, it was varied, interesting, and the sprite work was really fun. Like they, normally, especially during the period, we had games like Castlevania where Simon is, like on your TV, he's 2.5 inches tall, but these sprites were like big 4-inch tall monsters. I don't know how many pixels tall they were, but they were just big compared to everything else. The character was twice the size of Mario.
Yeah.
The fact that you got to play so many different gameplay types, the fact that so much of it was based on memorization and quick thinking and sort of, again, solving the puzzle.
Sure.
I mean, Space Mountain was all memorize the pattern.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's what that whole game was. And again, I keep bringing this up, but just banging music.
I don't remember the music at all. I'm going to have to look this up now. I don't remember a single tune.
Oh, it was so good all the way through. Like that's one of those soundtracks that has just lived on forever in my heart. I worked in music production for a long time.
Okay.
And Adventures in the Magic Kingdom is a big part of that.
That's cool, man. That's funny. That's awesome. Again, I didn't want to. I'm trying not to steal your thunder, man. But that was a game I owned as well, and that's really cool that you brought that up. That was a great memory for me. Again, one of those games my aunt got.
It's always great when people remember it. We're like a weird little club.
I
because
get
so many people have never heard of it, and then you bring it up with the right people, and you'll be in a group of 10 people, and 2 of them, their eyes will just light up.
I literally, you should see my head was almost on the desk if I knew that wasn't going to make noise. I was like, I can't believe I'm hearing this man talk about Adventures in the Magic Kingdom. Oh, that's so good, man. Daryl, also known as Mr. Thou on Twitter, has been a supporter of the show from the very beginning and has some fun stories about growing up as a Chrono Trigger fan, playing a VIC-20 as a super youngin', and willing Super Mario Bros. 3 into North American existence. Here he tells us about a strange yet formative game he still holds close to his heart. Quick note, the audio here is a little on the low side and there are some pops in the audio. Apologies if it's a little rough on the ears, but as I've said before, this show is for everybody. It's inclusive, not exclusive, and that'll happen on these shows. So the content's great. Daryl's great. Let's check it out. Cool, man. Anything else that comes to mind as we're kind of going through that era?
Yeah, I guess another game that I think I'd mentioned on Twitter with you was a game called Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom.
Yes, you did mention this.
Yeah,
I need to know a bit more. I should have researched this beforehand so we could have an actual conversation. I did not, so I need you to explain what this is.
Okay, yeah, this game was kind of like a text-based adventure, I guess.
Okay.
But it had pictures in it. So.
And was it on the NES?
It was on the NES, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a game about anthropomorphic vegetables, and there were menus on the side of the screen. You could move, you can talk, you can hit things, and you solved disagreements through rock paper scissors fights.
Oh wow! Isn't that like a Japanese thing? That's like a common like a rock paper scissor thing. Isn't that like a Japanese type of game?
I don't know.
I might be wrong on that. Regardless, I am now looking up this. I looked up just so you know when I typed in Princess Tom, boom, second result, Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom. So you are not alone on this. This is
super cute game. I had a lot of fun with it, and it really, really helped me with a lot of my reading experiences.
Yeah,
being a text-based adventure, it's you really have to know how to read to play that game.
That's awesome. Cool.
I was about 5 or 6 when I was playing that one too. And
very cool. Very cool.
Very memorable soundtrack too.
Like a lot of people have said so far in this show, I had dozens of games that really left that kind of impact on me. But for the sake of this conversation, I'll pick 2. The first one was Maniac Mansion. When I first received that game for Christmas or birthday or whenever I received it, that game had literally everything. I had never played something that rich with humor and personality and gameplay before. I believe it was probably one of my first point-and-click adventures. I'm not sure if it was that or Deja Vu, another game we may want to talk about in the future, but I'm pretty sure it was Maniac Mansion. That just kind of that pixel hunting point and clicker that I really still love to this day. They're really phenomenal games. But that game, had literally everything. They had characters I could relate with. You know, I had glasses and was one of the smart kids. So Bernard and I we were tight, right? They looked like kids I knew, or at least I thought I would become. You know, the high school stereotypes. It has an outstanding soundtrack. It's probably my favorite soundtrack in games. And if I'm not risking a takedown by playing Maniac Mansion music right now, I'm doing something wrong. Every track is a stone cold classic. For me, top marks go to Michael's theme. That's just my personal opinion. Has a relatable story that wasn't just Final Fantasy these and thous, and it had hints of science fiction with the meteor and hints of horror and terror. Some of that stuff in that game is scary. You know, when Mama Edson comes out, you run, you run. Off-kilter humor that I had never experienced before. It was the first time I experienced a PC-style game on my NES, and it left a huge impression on me. The second would be baseball. Now, I've mentioned this before on this show and other places because I had Rad Racer and baseball on my NES for my first two games. That was all I had. No Mario. And so I played a good amount of Rad Racer. I played the heck out of baseball. And I don't even like baseball that much. I'm ambivalent about baseball. It's fine. It's okay. But in those days, you got 2 games for Christmas, or 1 game for Christmas and 1 game for birthday. That's what you played. And I played baseball to death. I was Team Y, always Team Y. Grew up in New York, or grew up in New Jersey. So Y was Yankees. So that's how I always kind of went with that. But for me, it wasn't just that. I didn't just play baseball. I simmed it. I simulated it. Every team had a proper name and city, and every player had a name and a number. The game didn't provide this. I just made it up. I documented it in a series of notebooks, all of these statistics about this game. I ran full seasons. I kept track of win-loss records, batting averages, pitcher ERAs, RBIs, home runs, all in a stack of spiral notebooks, blurred with erasers and indented with mistakes and rewrites and corrections. And I mean, it was just almost a mini obsession for me. I had to catalog these experiences to the point that when my next baseball game came, in the form of Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball for the Super Nintendo, I was shocked. The game does this for me. The game does this for me. This is amazing. It'll do the season. It keeps track of all that stuff. Away go the notebooks. It was proper incredible to actually have the game do that work for me. Without stretching, I'm not sure how that affected me as a person. I'm not a statistician in my regular life now. But I think it is a reminder of how games can become more than pixels on a screen. They bled into my daily life, just like they've bled into daily lives of all of my guests here so far. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of A Gamer Looks at 40. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a like, rating, or review on Apple Podcasts. It's a really important platform that helps just increase the reach of the show so we can tell more stories. So please consider doing so if you haven't already, or do so on the podcatcher of choice. Also, please follow me on Twitter at A Gamer Looks at 40. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.